Welcome. This lesson is actually a very, very simple lesson. If you did last lesson, it's just a continuation of it or an extension of it. The last lesson, we learned to find the midpoint between two numbers. Now we're going to find the midpoint between 2 points. In other words, points in a two-dimensional figure or an XY coordinate system. So again, if I go over 3 and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, that's that first point. This point here, 3, 4. Then if I go over 4, 5, and up 4, I find that midpoint, or that point. And what we want to do is we actually want to find the midpoint between the two. We want to find where right in between. It's a very simple process. It's finding the average of the x's, just like we did in the first one. So in other words, I look at just the 3 and the 5 and say, what's 3 plus 5? 8. What's 8 divided by 2? 4. So the value of this point's, the x value of that point is 4. And the y value is 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. The y value doesn't change. So in other words, what I'm really doing is just taking the average of both the x and the y's. So I look at the 9 and the 3 and say, what's 9 plus 3? It's 12. What's half of 12? 6. The midpoint between 9 and 3 is 6. The midpoint between 5 and 5 happens to be 5. Apparently they're doing horizontal, and they'll probably do vertical lines too, or vertical line segments, but they don't have to. Like this one actually isn't. We want to find the midpoint between 0, 10 and 6, 0. Well, what's the midpoint between 0 and 6? Well, 0 plus 6 is 6 divided by 2 is 3. The midpoint of the x values, and that's what we're doing. We're finding the midpoint of the x values. That's 3. Then we find the midpoint of the y values. What's 10 plus 0? Well, that's 10 divided by 2 is 5. So the midpoint of the y values is 5. Very simple concept. If you have any questions, that doesn't get any harder than that as you go up in this. The only thing that they might throw in that might be different is they might throw in decimals and negatives and stuff like that, larger numbers, but it's no different. If I want to find the midpoint between 17.2 or 12.7 and 9.7, I grab a calculator, add the two together, and divide by 2, and I find the midpoint. Add 13.4 to 7.2 together and divide by 2, and I find the midpoint of its y value. Not very difficult. If you have questions, though, please do ask me during class.